So Taiwan's central bank just officially announced their intentions with a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This came out literally hours ago, and what makes us very interested with the timing of this announcement is the fact that we all saw the news yesterday when China came out and accused America of freezing 127,000 Bitcoin. It kind of looks as if something might be going on in Southeast Asia surrounding maybe a secret Bitcoin plan. Sophie, we have a lot to talk about today. Where would you like to kick things off?
Well, just this story about China accusing the US of stealing $13 billion in Bitcoin is absolutely fascinating to me, especially in the midst of a tariff war, a trade war. You would think that China, would practice what they preach, telling their people, you're not allowed to use Bitcoin, but apparently they are. So it's really funny that now they're accusing the US of stealing Bitcoin, saying that was supposed to be restitution for victims of the Lubian mining pool. And it's also strangely coincidental that it happens to be the same exact amount of Bitcoin that the US government seized from that Cambodian pig butchering scam ring. So it's a little sus on the part of the US, but at the same time, it just surprises me that that China is so interested in Bitcoin all of a sudden. I wonder what the signal is there.
Yeah, it's really interesting the timing because everybody's been talking about this trade war that's been going on between America and China. This is why the markets have been, let's just say, a little bit more volatile than usual recently. Everybody's waiting on, what exactly was going to happen with America and China. We saw in the past couple of weeks, Trump did actually strike an economic deal with China. And again, a lot of people were waiting for that certainty before allocating money and allocating capital. We're now in November. We're in Q4. This is when things are supposed to get really interesting. Everybody knows that we typically see a Santa Claus rally. This is because we get a lot of clarity in Q4. And what's fascinating about me is this, not only the Bitcoin price just acting the way it is, but this obsession over Bitcoin. Like if, we're talking about multi-hundred billion, maybe multi-trillion dollar trade deals between America and China, why are the two countries squabbling about $13 billion worth of Bitcoin? And then why is the day after we got this news that China and America were fighting over this, we've got this news about Taiwan. So let's break this down. This was literally this morning. We saw a few tweets circulating on Twitter, but it looks as if Taiwanese central bankers are now putting in moves to not only study Bitcoin as how it could be used as a strategic Bitcoin reserve, but they've also got to draft Bitcoin-friendly rules in the next 6 months. And also, this is the kicker and the interesting part, pilots Bitcoin treasury holdings, starting with inventory relating to seized Bitcoin awaiting auctions. So again, this is really new. You can see the date of this tweet literally came out 5:30 a.m. this morning. We are waiting for more information to happen. We think that our Southeast Asian friends are asleep right now, so maybe we're going to get some more clarity in the next 6 to 12 hours. But the timing of Taiwan coming out and saying this, it's certainly interesting because we all know that, again, China sees Taiwan as their own. What's the quote, Sophie? Is it two countries, one model?
Yeah, basically, two countries, one model. It's funny because earlier we were looking up, who is the president or the leader of Taiwan? And I was like, I mean, on paper, they have a president, but in reality, the leader of Taiwan is Xi Jinping. So it's interesting. He's almost using Taiwan as kind of like this Trojan horse or this vehicle for China to own Bitcoin. And it's interesting that, they're also the way that they're trying to acquire Bitcoin by accusing the United States of stealing it from them. So they're almost saying like we're not going to buy Bitcoin, but we are going to try to stack some sats in these other ways. And I think that's to my point earlier that they don't want people to, see their government as hypocritical. They're seeing it as justice reform. We're just enforcing the law and taking back what is ours for our people, but we don't want the citizens of China to actually own any Bitcoin of their own.
I think that's probably at the root issue of all of this. Now, we were talking about Taiwan. I just jumped on Google and I found this about Hong Kong. Again, I'm on their own. I think each of these individual stories, they're just little stories. But when you kind of piece everything together, you can start to see that maybe something is happening in Southeast Asia, because I saw literally 2 days ago, Hong Kong has just launched digitally native bonds to quote unquote intensify their crypto hub ambitions. So of course, we've been talking about this at Simply Bitcoin for a long time. Hong Kong came out in 2024 and they said, look, we want to be the global crypto hub of the world. And a lot of people were like, wait on a minute, Hong Kong? Isn't that essentially linked to China? Why is mainland China having the public stance, look, we're going to ban Bitcoin. Bitcoin mining's bad. We're going to kick it out of the country. It's illegal in our country. But at the same time, Hong Kong is coming out and saying, we want to be the global crypto hub. We remember that there was conferences held in Hong Kong in 2023, 2024, and the publicly confirmed reports were saying that Chinese officials from Beijing were at those conferences and they were signing off with what Hong Kong was doing and their ambitions to be a crypto hub. And again, all of that was kind of like, okay, that's strange. I think now that we're seeing Hong Kong continue this week, again, a very interesting week, but this week come out and say they're going to start launching digitally native bonds. I think this is another little sign. It's a little signpost. It's another piece in the puzzle that's really interesting. We've got Hong Kong also, again, look at the date, the 11th of November coming out, and Hong Kong is now easing crypto laws, allowing exchanges to tap liquidity. I don't know. I mean, maybe I could be just lining up some dots that aren't necessarily connected, Sophie, but I'm smelling a little bit of a Southeast Asia Bitcoin play here. What do you think?
What I'm smelling is competition. They're literally taking Donald Trump's words that he used, during his campaign speeches, saying that he wanted to make Bitcoin the world capital, the capital of Bitcoin mining and the crypto capital of the world or whatever. And I think that China is seeing an opportunity here, not just to compete, but possibly to overtake the United States when it comes to holding Bitcoin. And I think that that's also what's behind the fact that they are coming after us and accusing us. And so now Hong Kong is coming out with this news that they also want to essentially launch their own ETFs in Hong Kong. So it sounds like they're copying us, and honestly imitation is the best form of flattery. And it seems like something that it kind of follows a pattern, right? When the US starts doing something, other countries tend to follow, and they tend to do exactly what we're doing because they see that they're working. Don't forget that the IBIT ETF has been the best performing product on BlackRock's balance sheet. So people in Hong Kong are seeing that and they're thinking, hey, we could do that too. And coincidentally, China is also gearing up for what might be a huge quantitative period of quantitative easing, which I think you have the link for that. But if China starts printing a bunch of money and Hong Kong is on the verge of allowing exchanges to tap into that liquidity and put it into Bitcoin backed products, then again, that's another way that China has just circumvented the direct buying of Bitcoin so that they can acquire some for themselves and strengthen their economy to compete with the United States.
Exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about competition. America has come out and said we want to be the global superpower in Bitcoin. China's come out and said, hey, let's just roll Hong Kong. Let's just roll, Taiwan out there, and let's just let them do the Bitcoin bidding for us while we publicly maintain our anti-Bitcoin stance. I think there's something there, but I think there also could be a little bit of competition when it comes to monetary policy. We saw that so far in 2025, we've seen more interest rate cuts than we saw in 2008. So this is a little bit of a head scratcher because supposedly the economy is fine, it's doing well. But if we have more interest rate cuts today than 2008, that is at least something I think we should be paying attention to. It's very strange, but we saw a little bit of, let's call it spasms in the American repo market this week. The spreads between the SOFA rates and the Fed funds rate are widening. Again, it's not always saying, look, this is a crisis imminent, but it says, hey, there's something going on in the plumbing. And now in China, we get a little bit more confirmation that there could be maybe a little bit of a shortage of dollars and liquidity out there, because we can see China's central bank is maintaining its accommodative policy as challenges.
So many adjectives.
Right?
So much fluff. There's just so much. It's like the writing is matching the amount of like money that they're printing. It's just so much of it, but has no value.
Exactly. It's all obfuscation. They don't want us to know what's actually going on.
It's a
But I
dog
think
and pony show.
exactly. What they're saying is, let's just use big words. Let's confuse the people. Let's make sure that the kids like Luke with the crazy haircut online cannot pronounce the words, and the true message gets lost in the translation. But I think the translation here is shit screwed, and they need to print money. And again, this is why medium term, long term, Bitcoin is the only asset. It is, well, even in the short term, let's be honest, Bitcoin is the only asset. And we think a lot of people, they get distracted with these short-term price movements. But again, I would just encourage everyone to pay very close attention to what the central banks right now are doing. We can see on Tuesday, literally yesterday, November 11th, China's central bank came out and they said they would maintain their loose monetary policy, which is again translation for we need to continue printing money because there is not enough liquidity in the system. And again, a lot of people have kind of been waiting for the next big print, as Larry Lepard calls it. We're waiting for that next big wave in the liquidity cycle. We do know that Bitcoin, it kind of moves in tandem with the liquidity cycle. And there's some really cool charts. I'm just bringing one up that shows that typically every 4 years, the global money supply has this big spike. So far, liquidity has been slowly but surely increasing over the past couple of years after that massive drainage of the system in 2021. But we're waiting for that next big move up in this pink line. I think the blue line shows it a little bit better. This is the year-on-year growth of the M2. And you can see what happened in 2017, massive ramp up in liquidity. And again, that correlated with Bitcoin's bull run. We saw the same thing in 2020 and 2021. That blue line ramped up, huge Bitcoin bull run. We went from 10K to 65K in about 3 or 4 months. And now we can see liquidity has recovered. It's no longer declining. It was declining all 2022 and early 2023. Coincidentally, Bitcoin had a little bit of a bear run during those years. But we can see we've been ticking up. We're just waiting for that next big explosive move in liquidity. And maybe what the Chinese central bank kind of confirmed yesterday is maybe a little bit of an indication that we could be closer to that next big move in liquidity than most people think. What are your thoughts on this, Soph?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. As soon as China starts printing, the Fed is just going to have to catch up. They're not really going to have a choice, right? And the only thing that concerns me, I mean, aside from inflation that comes with the M2 money supply going up, is what if this money supply doesn't really go into hard assets, but it goes into the ETFs, it goes into paper Bitcoin? What if that's what pumps, but then Bitcoin itself doesn't. Is that a possibility, or is that just like me thinking the worst because we've had the most like horrible bull run, in my opinion, of our lives?
Well, it is true. We have had the worst bull run in Bitcoin history. I'll bring up some charts to show the guys in a moment that kind of illustrates that point. And again, I think anything is a possibility. I'm a perma bull, but I can't rule out the fact that, that is a possibility. We know that BlackRock today owns, what is it? It's 4% of all the Bitcoin, over 800,000 coins. And that's grown in just the past 2 years. So it's a possibility. We're seeing, again, a lot of money going to publicly traded stocks as well. MicroStrategy owns 3% of the supply. If a lot of this money goes into, BlackRock and co, I'm still hopeful that that's going to add buy pressure and demand in the market for spot Bitcoin. We have a lot of on-chain firms who have claimed to be accurately tracing BlackRock's public Bitcoin addresses. So they are, from all accounts, buying Bitcoin. Again, who knows what they're doing on the side? Are they shorting Bitcoin at the same time? Again, this is very common for hedge funds to hedge themselves. They buy a lot of Bitcoin, but at the same time, they go into the options market and they buy some puts. They hedge and they wedge themselves.
Right.
So we're a little bit less sure about that. But I think it's really interesting here because we have liquidity coming. We also didn't quite touch on this yet. We've got
the only reason I ask is because we did get those interest rate cuts at the end of October and nothing happened. So my question is, where is all that liquidity going? Who is absorbing it? And why haven't we seen the price go up?
I think so. Interest rate cuts historically, it's been a little bit of a weaker correlation to Bitcoin price. Typically, you see this happen in waves. So interest rates get cut first, and then the money printer bazookas come out. From memory, in 2020, I think rates were dropped from like late February, early March. And I think it wasn't until the bond market started breaking on March 21st or 22nd, then they announced $3 trillion of liquidity in the US, and then the markets bottomed the next day. We've seen interest rate cut for the last few months. Now, this report and confirmation from Powell that QT officially ends in December. So this is in about 2 weeks. And then from there, he hasn't confirmed it, but I mean, he's kind of implied it by what he's saying. If QT is ending, QE is coming. And I think this is when I'm certainly going to be strapping myself in, so to say, because this is when the biggest moves come.
Oh, did we lose Luke?
Makes biggest moves.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Maybe we were talking too many truth bombs.
Maybe. Yeah, the internet is just like going crazy with all of the signal. But so then that would almost confirm the theory that everything everyone was expecting in 2025 is, down the gutter, in the trash. All of the models are breaking, and 2026 might actually be gearing up for the real bull market. And instead of seeing the historic Q4 pumps that we have been used to for the last couple of cycles, we're going to start seeing them at the beginning of the following year, which is interesting because that means that the cycles are elongating, right? While also, funny enough, the halvings are getting shorter because over time they do get shorter. They go from 4 years to like 3.5, and then it gets slightly shorter. So anyway, I think that's super interesting. And I want to talk about this story, how dominant Chinese makers, because a lot of people are talking about this in the comments. They're saying, hey, aren't the miners made in China? Why would China, be against their citizens holding Bitcoin if they're making the miners in this country? And I'd like to take you back to the year 2021 when China actually banned mining outright. And that was what cut the 2021 bull cycle very, very short, and it was very disappointing. But then they lifted it. And with this trade war that's going on and the tariffs, a lot of those Chinese makers of Bitcoin mining machines set up US productions so that they could beat those tariffs. So they're actually now manufacturing the machines here. And that was the whole purpose of the Trump administration implementing these tariffs. They really wanted to take these economic things from China, and they wanted to move it to the US. And, this is a pretty good example of it because, like it or not, the US is still, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, the number one mining country in the world.
Yeah, so America has, last time I checked, over 30% of the hash power within its borders. Texas is a massive hub. But again, like you say, so if it's kind of been interesting, why have 90% of the ASICs machines, these are the specialized Bitcoin mining computers, why are 90% of those created in China? A lot of people have kind of been scratching their heads for a while. That's a little bit strange. Why do we have, again, some people could call it risk. Maybe there's a little bit of supply chain risk here. Who knows what's being put into those Bitcoin mining ASICs? I have no idea. Just questions that some people have been asking. We can see that Bitmain, I think that's Canaan, and MicroBT, they build over 90% of the global Bitcoin mining rigs. But now what's interesting is all of Chinese origin. These companies are now setting up manufacturing footholds in the United States as President Donald Trump's tariff war reshapes the cryptocurrency supply chain. I think this is, again, a little bit of signal that just gets lost in the sauce. Everybody sees, all right, Taiwan's talking about creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And all of this has kind of been happening a week after Trump and Xi finally finished this economic deal that they've been squabbling over for about a month now. I think.
Did you know that apparently this was all because the interpreters messed up their job and there was something lost in communication and that's why they blew up at each other?
I mean, I
Because
wouldn't.
we were fine. We were fine. Everything was great. And then all of a sudden, it just went it was from one day to the next, October 10th. It just Bitcoin took a complete crash, and they're saying that it was because of a misunderstanding. Apparently, that misunderstanding has now been resolved, and they're actually coming to an agreement. But Luke, my question to you is Bitcoin, is mining also part of this deal? Is it taking some sort of important role in these negotiations?
I think it has to be. What do you think about the squabble about the freezing of Bitcoin? The timing of that coming out yesterday, that has to be related to what Taiwan's doing today. I'm no mathematician or, I don't run all these statistical models claiming they're gospel, but I think if somebody were to run the probabilities, the chances of that happening on day after the day and then being unrelated events, it feels like a very low probability event.
It feels like a very related event, actually. It feels like, they're thinking about this and they're trying, remember, China has their own form of propaganda. Not to say that the US doesn't. I mean, we would put the Soviet Union's propaganda machine to shame. But the Chinese have their own, propaganda machine as well. And it's really not a coincidence that because this story, believe it or not, about the discovery of the Lubian mining pool Bitcoin being seized or gone missing or hacked had actually come out back in August. And I had seen a tweet about it. I didn't really understand what they were talking about. Let me see if I can bring it up. And so that here, let me bring it up right here.
The math math, the more I think about it.
My point is, why
I
wouldn't they
think
have come out with this in all the way back in August, right? Because somebody was talking about it. The largest ever crypto heist, 3.5 billion stolen from Lumen. And it says 3.5 billion because that was the value of the Bitcoin back in 2020 when this initially happened, right? But they were talking about this in August. Why did they wait until today, or sorry, yesterday, to break this? And I don't think that there are any coincidences. I think that the Taiwanese government was probably, preparing for this, gearing up for this announcement, for the meeting or the hearing that they were having today. They decided to and this is a message: we're going to come back for our Bitcoin, United States, and we're going to establish our own Bitcoin reserve. And that's going to make us compete not just in commerce anymore, but also in commodities, which now Bitcoin has become a commodity like gold, like oil, where global superpowers are fighting over it. And that, to me, is extremely bullish, because if governments that actually used to make fun of Bitcoin, that used to call it a scam, that used to say that we would never adopt Bitcoin or Operation Choke Point 2.0, if we had all of this even like a year ago, 2 years ago, and now these global superpowers are fighting over Bitcoin, that is extremely bullish news. That means that we might be seeing the price skyrocket in 2026. I do not think that the bull market is over. I think it's probably just ramping up. We lost Luke, but now we have him back. Here, let me pull him up. Anyway, I think that this is like the signal here, right? If other countries, superpowers are gearing up to have their own Bitcoin strategic reserve, if they're accusing other countries of taking it, don't forget what America, how we fought for oil just in the last 20 years, don't forget what we are capable of doing. And I think that Bitcoin might be that next commodity that global superpowers are fighting over.
I think next that's what was going. Predict that actually is brand guys. To that for a little later. I think we should first map to Bitcoin. Well, we all talk about Bitcoin every single day on the channel, and I think if America and China battling over Bitcoin hasn't convinced you to get started buying, I don't know what will. So again, we highly encourage you guys to sign up with the Bitcoin Well. If you scan that QR code on the screen right now, we believe you get 3 chances to go into the draw to try to win 1 million Satoshis when you sign up and use that promo code SimplyBTC. So check that out. Go into the draw. Again, 1% of a Bitcoin, 1 million sats. I think that's going to be generational wealth in the future, but maybe we talk about that a little bit later. Sign up with the Bitcoin Well, and let's thank our other amazing show partners before we talk about this in a little bit more detail.
All right, guys, we got a great show for you today. We will be right back after this commercial break.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, StampSeed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed phrases really secure? StampSeed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need for you to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates. Instead of just writing them down on paper, paper is fragile. Titanium plates are strong. Your words are actually stamped into the titanium plate with this hammer and these letter stamping tools. Once the words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and time-proof. And now you can customize your titanium seed plates. You can upload your design or logo and they will laser engrave it on the back of your seed plate, the opposite side of where the words are. Stamp your seed on StampSeed and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the stampseed.com store.
All right, guys. Here are your numbers for today. I don't think I've ever done this before, the Clark Moody's dashboard. Sorry, we're going in and out with Luke. Anyway, the price of Bitcoin today at this moment is $101,740. That's 983 sats per dollar. The market cap is at $2.03 trillion, and we are at a negative 19% decline from all-time high. But fear not, because the big print is coming.
It absolutely is. Now, I want to add some numbers because we're talking about this massive strategic Bitcoin reserve announcement in Taiwan. We got China battling with America over $13 billion of Bitcoin. Again, I ask the people, think about that for a moment. If China and America, they're going into trillions of dollars of debt every year, over $1,000 billion of debt. They're just printing it out of the wazoo. Why are they fighting over $13 billion of Bitcoin? I think the signal here is there's 21 million coins. There's 2.5 million on exchanges. And I think maybe we're starting to see nation states recognize how important 13 billion or 120,000 Bitcoin could be worth it. Because
don't forget, Luke, just 5 years ago, that 13 billion was 3 billion.
Exactly.
And that's why they weren't fighting about it back then. Now they're seeing the writing on the wall. They're seeing, damn, if that was 3 billion and now it's 13 billion in 10 years, it could be like trillions of dollars. We better take this thing now before this gets out of control and gets more difficult to take back. I wonder if they found out about self-custody yet. I wonder if they understand how that works, because
we know El Salvador has.
Definitely. Oh, definitely.
They get it. Now, speaking of El Salvador, and I think a lot of the nation state race that we're talking about today, I think the squabble over 127,000 coins, when you look at this chart, it kind of puts it into perspective. The biggest nation state holders of Bitcoin, America and China, they both hold somewhere around 190,000 coins. So 127,000 coins, this is a sizable amount. That kind of, for me, I think it explains why they're arguing over $13 billion worth of Bitcoin. I think we're in this, again, some would call it a global hash war, a global race over Bitcoin. I think, speaking of that, what was fascinating was Max Kaiser. Again, right now we have Adopting Bitcoin going on. This is the conference down in El Salvador, and Russell Brand and Max Kaiser were on the same stage together. That's
so cool.
So cool. Super cool. I might try to play this video from here, Sophie. I'm not sure if the audio is going to work. If it doesn't...
Oh, I have it. I can pull it up. All right, let's watch this video.
Let's do it.
Kind of moniker of what the future might look like, because I believe that the technology that we have these days tends towards decentralization, mass communication potentially independent, mass transaction potentially transparent through blockchain, and I think this cannot but facilitate decentralized revolution. And my prayer is for countries like mine, the United Kingdom, that this can be undertaken peacefully and lovingly. Because to come to a country like El Salvador, where there's abundant optimism, where the young people I speak to seem educated and bright and brilliant and faithful and enthusiastic, coming from a place like the UK, where people feel loaded and burdened and despairing. And this is not an accident. Our consciousness has been lowered, our opportunities have been lowered, the frequency is being lowered. So to come to a place like this that is not without its problems and hasn't had significant challenges to surmount, it's regularly explained to me that you had long years of civil war, long years of gang warfare, and it's taken a near miracle and serious intervention to get El Salvador on what it is right now, which appears to me very much the right track and a beacon for the old classical world and even what was once referred to as the New World, North America.
Russell
Brand. I love this comment. Russell loves them adjectives. Because that's so real. He's kind of a poet, and I love the way that he talks about Bitcoin. I love the way he talks about a lot of things, but in particular, I love what he said about Bitcoin decentralizing money and how that decentralization will bring the decentralization of revolution. But what I think he's, being colorful about, and how I can break that down a little bit more simply, is the decentralization of power, right? I think it's the decentralization of power that's the signal there, because if you start to give power back to the people, right, it forces governments, it forces the institutions around you to actually compete for your vote with your money. And that is the real revolution. We think that revolution is going out into the street and protesting and like having a good time with your buddies. But in reality, it's making change, and it's a demonstration of power from the people. And what bigger demonstration of power from the people than saying that we are not going to continue to live in your system, to use your fiat, to use the thing that you deem powerful. We are going to completely come out of this framework by using money that actually empowers us. And we're going to make you work for it instead of us have to work for you. I think that is the true revolution. And I think that, it brings up the question. If we started with what is money, we will end with what is government.
Fascinating. I think that entire question is one that I think is going to get asked by a lot of people. You made a really interesting point. Russell made a really interesting point. This is the first decentralized technological revolution we're living through. Again, I'm the biggest fan of the book, The Sovereign Individual. Their entire thesis is that we are living through one of the biggest technological changes in history, and each prior major technological change that impacted how we organized and worked and what opportunities there were in society, they were all centralizing. We had the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago that centralized hunters and gatherers into farms and villages, plowing the fields, working for the kings and the queens. Then about 10,000 years later, we saw the Industrial Revolution in the 1770s. What did that do? Centralized again. Everybody moved from the farms and the villages to these big mega cities like London and New York and LA, because all of the best jobs were in the machines, the factories, and again, the offices, the 9-to-5 debt slavery offices. This is where the common consensus, the narrative, the universities and the education system told us we had to go to make the money. But now, the authors of the incredible book, Sovereign Individual, they're saying we're living through the next big technological revolution. This is the decentralized revolution. We're moving from the industrial age to the information age. And I think this is kind of what Russell is tapping into here. Now, for the first time in human history, I don't have to go and work in New York or Sydney I have to be careful with what I say, but I don't have to I don't have to do everything that my big government tells me I have to do to get a job. Again, 2020 happened, it's been and gone. We all know what we had to do to work. Recently in the UK, they're talking about digital IDs. To work, it is now mandatory to get a digital ID and live in London, this big mega city where we have mass control, mass surveillance. There's
Correct. That's such a good point. It takes away the power from certain locations. Again, it's like land and locations, like that can't vote. It's the people who vote. It's people who should really hold this power. And it's incredible how this next wave of decentralization is going to empower the individual, empower the masses who actually have to work for the value and the economy, while these very powerful people can just print money for free.
Yeah, absolutely. And back, retracking just a little bit on what Russell said as well, which is actually something that's really interesting, and it's something that you don't recognize until you travel to a country like El Salvador. The people there are generally, they are actually more positive, more happy than countries like America overall. Now, obviously, there's advantage and disadvantages to living in all different countries. Like, obviously, the entrepreneurial spirit, it's stronger in America. No questioning that, no denying that. But the average person in America, nihilistic, negative. You do have to seek out your tribe a lot harder in America. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm talking about the average citizen in America, nihilistic, cost of living crisis. They can't retire. They can't escape the 9 to 5.
And they've lost all their morals. Like, when you have a broken money, you have a broken society. And I think that's what Nayib Bukele figured out, essentially. If we fix the base layer of society, it enables us to have to fix everything else, because when you empower the individual, when you empower the people of your country, you realize that you actually have to do the things that you promised. And Nayib Bukele has delivered on all of that.
He's exposing a lot of the Western governments and a lot of their flawed policies and all sorts of
He's exposing that you could just do things if you really wanted to, and if you were transparent and you had a moral backbone, essentially.
Those are lacking amongst politicians all around the world. But I think Bitcoin will be the great exposer of that as it continues to seep into not only governments, but the banking industry. I think we've got some fascinating details to uncover for you guys in the next segment. I think before we do that, let's give, again, another shout out to our show partners before we keep this train rolling.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin, the leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Unlock the liquidity in your Bitcoin without having to sell your Bitcoin. They've issued $9 billion in loans to over 10,000 customers since 2018. I absolutely love these guys. Not only do I have an account with them, but I also have a loan. And what I love about them is that there are no monthly payments, and you could pay back the loan at any time. As soon as you send your Bitcoin as collateral, you'll have cash in your account within 24 hours. Over 1,000 five-star customer reviews, and they've never lost a single dollar or sat of customer money. Go to learn.ledin.io/simply today, and you'll get 0.25% off your first loan. I want to give a shout out to our partner, sat123.com. Sovereignty isn't just about your money. It's about your communications too. When the grid goes down, most people go dark. Cell towers fail in hurricanes, cyber attacks, and blackouts. But satellite phones, they don't rely on local infrastructure. Iridium has 77 satellites in orbit, giving you a direct line anywhere in the US, even offshore. If you hold your own Bitcoin keys, you should hold your own comms too. Sat123.com also has everything you need to start building your Bitcoin citadel. Starlink, battery backups, Faraday bags to protect your hardware wallets, and much, much more. It's a one-stop shop for anyone serious about resilience and off-grid independence. Stay connected, stay independent, stay sovereign. Go to sat123.com/simply today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. I want to give a shout out to our partner, BitKey. If you already self-custody your Bitcoin, you know the deal with hardware wallets by now. Complex setups, clumsy interfaces, and a seed phrase that can be lost, stolen, or forgotten. BitKey fixes that. BitKey is a multi-sig hardware wallet built by the team behind Square and Cash App. It packs a cryptographic recovery system and built-in inheritance feature into an intuitive, easy-to-use wallet with no seed phrase to sweat over. It's simple, secure, self-custody without the stress. Time named BitKey one of the best inventions of 2024. Get 20% off at bitkey.world. That's BITKEY.world with the code SIMPLY.
All right, guys, you know what time it is. It is BitKey ASMR. Use the promo code in the QR code. Hold on, that I have to pull up, and I'm really bad at pushing buttons and thinking at the same time. Maybe it's because I'm a woman. Maybe it's because I am heavily pregnant. But if you want to do this pregnant lady a favor, go ahead and scan the QR code to buy yourself and your whole family a BitKey.
Hey, pressing buttons harder than it looks. I can.
Bro, it's so hard. I'm getting wrecked.
It is harder than it looks. This is why we Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the easiest thing in the world. Makes trading easier, makes your life easier. And it's not just us who think that. It is the corporations, it is the institutions, it is the banks. Again, there's some conflicting data about what exactly is going on with these institutions. There have been a lot of really good charts showing that OG Bitcoin holders are actually selling. Then there is countering information suggesting that a lot of that Bitcoin that is showing up as a sell based on on-chain data is actually moving into BlackRock so that these OGs can financialize a portion of their Bitcoin. They can borrow against a portion of their Bitcoin. Maybe they're diversifying. Instead of having $10 billion of Bitcoin on a BitKey hardware wallet, maybe they want to put $1 billion of that in BlackRock and use it as a quote unquote bank account. Again, I'm not calling an ETF a bank account, but I hope you guys kind of pick up what we're putting down here. So again, I want to kind of look at what exactly is going on with these corporations because there is, like I said, a lot of really interesting data as to what is happening. So we can see this Yahoo Finance article came out and they said this morning, the slowdown in buying marks a sharp pullback from September when corporate treasuries purchased more than 38,000 Bitcoin. Because this month we can see public and private firms added 14,000 Bitcoin. So that is less than half. It's about half, less than half than what we saw in September. But again, I think the signal here, that's still more than all the Bitcoin that's mined each month. There's quick maths, 450 Bitcoin mined a day. If there's 30 days in a month, that means somewhere around 13,000 coins are mined a month. So even if corporations are slowing their buying, only buying 14,447 in October, that's still all the Bitcoin that's mined each month. But again, it's a trend we're going to keep an eye on and continue following for you guys. We can see public companies right now have bought 1 million coins. We've got governments sitting on 644,000 coins. And now exchanges, according to this article, again, this varies a lot, but ETFs and exchanges held another 1.5 million coins. So, Sophie, do you think there's any signal here? Do you think corporations slightly decreasing their buying action in October is anything to keep an eye on?
I don't know. I think this is kind of a confusing article only because these same corporations did a massive sell-off in the beginning of November, right? They saw the prices go down and their clients sold immediately. But I think this is also due to the fact that we have been preaching the 4-year cycle for as long as, you know, Bitcoin has been around. And so I think a lot of people who have gotten exposure through ETFs probably think that right now is the time to sell. Right now is the end of the bull market, and they're not actually tapped into everything else that's going on in the news and economics. And they kind of want to just like take their 20-40%, which is a lot for them, and, you know, call it a day. But what are they going to do when and that means that the demand has cooled off. But that doesn't necessarily mean that these corporations are not buying Bitcoin for themselves to have in reserves. That doesn't mean that they're not going to have these cheap sats for, for what it's worth, um, available, and then sell it to their customers for a lot more in the future. Because don't forget, like, people FOMO into Bitcoin. And if they see a spike in the price and all of a sudden it continue to go up, they're gonna say, "Oh, wow, okay, this is still rallying, so I'm gonna buy a little bit just to see where it goes." And it happens every single time without fail. I don't think that the corporations are necessarily not buying Bitcoin. I think their clients aren't buying Bitcoin, and that is kind of like what I'm reading between the lines here. Because I don't see why these corporations would stop buying Bitcoin at these prices. I mean, isn't that why supposedly they were shaking the weak hands? Isn't that why, or at least like that's what a lot of people were speculating. Oh, the government, the institutions are all shaking weak hands so that they can buy cheap sats. Well, here they are. It's time
Mm.
to buy them. And, while their clients might be missing the boat, I think that there is absolutely no way Uncle Larry, Bitcoin Employee of the Year, is going to be missing out on this.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of those big institutions is Cantor Fitzgerald. I think we're going to try to play you guys a video of what they just recently said about Bitcoin and it being a better commodity than gold. Because I think this kind of gives us a little bit of an insight of where they think Bitcoin's going long term.
I think you're going to have to play that one because I don't have it.
Well, if this audio doesn't work for you guys, we can summarize it. It's just a short little clip.
Just make it full screen also. Oh, I don't think the audio is working. Here, send me that, and I will.
We can summarize it for the people. We've got Cantor Fitzgerald employees coming out and saying that there is no top to Bitcoin. It's far more valuable than gold. And I think this is another signpost because Cantor Fitzgerald, massive Bitcoin bull. I think Howard Lutnick in his personal portfolio has 40% of his money in micro strategy. Again, I think this is a huge signpost. I think he is more connected than most when it comes to just rubbing shoulders with Donald Trump and knowing the ins and the outs of potentially what is coming next. So I think we always like to just show you the signposts here. And I think if Cantor Fitzgerald is saying there is no ceiling on how high Bitcoin can go, I think that should maybe give the people a little bit of pause when they see charts like this. Because I've seen a lot of people show this chart. And look, I think OGs and long-term holders have sold some of their Bitcoin. They do it every cycle. They sell when the Bitcoin price gets above its previous all-time high. It's natural to peel a little bit of Bitcoin off. But I think I've seen this chart get shown a lot recently. And I think maybe some things that could be a little bit different with this chart that might explain why there are so many yellow and red lines is Bitcoin's becoming more institutionalized. We do have all of these public treasury companies like 21 with Jack Mallers. We've got MicroStrategy. Adam Back was involved in creating a different publicly traded company recently. And the way that a lot of these companies are getting created is a lot of these OG Bitcoiners, they're putting their Bitcoin into the treasury to start it. So while you might have this chart that says, and it's titled OG whale dumping, this isn't necessarily dumping. What they're showing is addresses that are 5 years old and 7 years old in the yellow and the red. They are moving Bitcoin that hasn't moved for 5 to 7 years. But this might not actually be getting sold. Sure, some of this could be sell pressure, not denying that. There's, again, if you had to ask me to put a probability on it, probably 10 or 20% of the lines here is sell pressure. It's natural to take profits, especially if Bitcoin's at 100K and 3 years ago it was at 25K, 15K.
Yeah,
But I think
people forget that they want to live their lives. Like a lot of the reason that some of these people got in was to store their wealth and to protect their wealth. So why wouldn't they be spending it on things that they like to do?
exactly. Bitcoin is money. We're supposed to spend a little bit of it as it goes up in value. Now, speaking of it going up in value, I think we have a very, very interesting indicator that we want to be looking at in the next segment of today's show that might maybe suggest that Bitcoin is going to be going up in value in the not too distant future. But again, before we get to there, let's give one more shout out to today's show partners before we wrap this thing up and show you guys the indicator that I love more than anything else.
Same.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. I want to give a shout out to our partner, bitcoinben.io. If you're into freedom, Bitcoin, and building a real community, this is for you. Gain exclusive access to real-world, members-only, private clubs across the globe, featuring poker nights, expert-led classes, co-working spaces, educational meetups, live events, and more. Current locations include Sarasota, Nashville, Boston, Dallas, Las Vegas, and St. Louis, with new clubs launching soon in West Palm Beach, Scottsdale, Alabama, and beyond. Not to mention Bitcoin Ben's resorts in El Salvador. There's 3 of them, and they're absolutely beautiful. You'll also get access to the first fully backed Bitcoin bank with fiat ramps and savings accounts. It's called Private Key Bank, and you guessed it, it's based out of El Salvador. Go peer-to-peer with Bitcoin bulk buys, tap into home equity for long-term Bitcoin growth, and join their exclusive mining pools if you're interested in mining. What are you waiting for? Head over to bitcoinben.io, join today, where Bitcoin meets freedom.
All right, guys. The McRib is officially back in the United States. We had originally broken this news and said that it was back in New Zealand, but forget all that. It's now back in the homeland. And what does that mean? A lot of people, say that memes imitate life, art imitates life, life imitates art. And this is one of those moments because every single time that the McRib has come back, the price of Bitcoin has pumped. Is that something that might happen this time around? I'm not sure. I'm just giving you the indicators. However, it did launch. And so I am very excited for that because I also just am a slob and kind of like the McRib.
Well, here we go. Confession. I eat a McDonald's every now and then, but I've never had a McRib. Maybe it's not a South American thing, but let's start a protest. Get this thing.
It's disgusting, but but it's also amazing. So, you got to try it at least once.
The McRib is back. And again, I think the timing of the McRib coming back, it's interesting timing, that's for sure. Bitcoin just touched its 50-week moving average. And hey, last time that happened, the McRib came back in early 2025 when Bitcoin, we got out of the purgatory of $60,000. We were there for 6, 7, 8 months. Everybody was calling it over. Everybody was saying, pack it up, boys. BlackRock's distributing. Pack it up, and girls. We got SOFI on the stream. But everybody said it's over. And again, what's really interesting is I got a pop-up just a moment ago looking at Bitcoin fear and greed. And what's fascinating for me, I've never seen the sentiment as horrifically bearish as it is right now, especially with Bitcoin, what, 20% away from an all-time high? Let's pull that up. We are right now 24. That is
Yikes.
fearful.
That's abysmal.
It is.
But it's really accurate. I think a lot of people feel that way. A lot of people are not hopeful that we are going to make it out of this, because let's be real. This has been a bear market. The Trump administration has been a bear market, guys. And what we thought was going to be, you know, 200, 300, some people were even saying $500,000 Bitcoin, has literally just been crab walking side to side. However, a serious indicator of what might be to come, aside from the Cantor Fitzgeralds of the world rubbing shoulders with the Trump administration, is Trump's son himself. And no, not our favorite Barron, but Eric Trump said recently in an interview that he believes that at some point, maybe not soon, but at some point, Bitcoin may hit $1 million a coin, and that he's still optimistic about Q4. So here he is saying, like, giving an interview about and answering a question about this topic. I don't know if we can play it. Can we play it? We don't have it. We don't have it on our end. We're
download it.
we are, you know, you're just gonna have to trust us, bro. He did say this, and it was recent. I think it was 2 days ago. So again, between China asking for their Bitcoin back, Taiwan starting to look into a Bitcoin strategic reserve, the quantitative easing that is about to occur in China, followed by likely the Fed after QT ends in December. These are all signs that we might be gearing up for one of the biggest bull runs in our history. And, you know, I kind of feel like our patience has been tested and therefore must be rewarded at some point, because if not, if I don't believe that, I'm going to go crazy, honestly, y'all. Like, this is going to be, if I have to wait another 4 years for a bull run, like, Satoshi and I are going to have some problems, but but it sounds like we're now gearing up, and like these cycles are transitioning from being bullish in Q4 to being bullish in Q1 of, you know, 2 years after the halving. It seems like since the institutions and the government has come onto the scene, all of our, you know, models and the cycles as we know it are breaking. And I think a couple of, like, last week or something, Opti and I had covered on the show how the only model that has made sense, oh my god, and Luke's gonna get mad at this because he said on the show, he's like, Luke's gonna hate that we're saying this, but the only model that has kind of made sense is the power law model. And like, I'm not saying that we're gonna have to wait an eternity or double the amount of time in this case for Bitcoin to double, but I think that that is adding to this hypothesis that it's being pushed, right? We might have experienced bull runs or these huge peaks in October, then we experienced them like more towards the end of the year, and now January might be looking like our month, but we'll see. I don't know anything. This is not financial advice.
Never financial advice. But that's kind of where I sit. I saw, I haven't had the time to dive into this rabbit hole super deep, but I saw a lot of people saying America is extending the maturity of its debt. So instead of rolling over 1 year, 2 year, 3 year debt, they're more going out on the long end of the curve, and they're doing 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year debt. So that's kind of elongated the liquidity cycle a little bit, which explains the chart we were talking about earlier, why we haven't seen that big spike in M2 like we see at the end of these 4 year cycles. So that's kind of where I am. Again, historically, it's been the worst Bitcoin bull run ever. You mentioned it, the power law. Oh, wow. My
I'm sorry, Luke. I'm
my
sorry.
biggest gripe with the power law, I won't go off on a 10-minute power law rant like I did yesterday, but all I'm going to say is what I tweeted a couple of days ago. the power law will claim it's right if the price of Bitcoin is between 50,000
Yeah,
and
no,
500,000.
the margins
So
are
again,
like really, really. You're actually, that's a really good point. Because when Nico was talking to me about it and like kind of talking me off a ledge and telling me, hey, like, you know, everything's gonna be okay. He was saying like, look, like this is when the next all-time high could be according to the power law. There is this other model, blah, blah. He was like explaining it to me, and I was like, okay. And you know, he's like, and the bottom could be. I was like, the bottom. There's a bottom to this power law thing, and it's super low. Like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, this is like this. It pretty much said nothing to me after that. Once he brought up the bottom, I just thought that we were talking about like average prices or just tops. I was like, I was cool with that. But then he mentioned a range. Absolutely not. I'm so done with ranges.
for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about right now, I'll pull up a quick chart of the power law. I think it's the most bearish model in Bitcoin. I've had my gripes with the power law. Here it is. This is the power law. That's supposedly the great predictor of price. It looks as if the bottom right now, 2025, it's somewhere around 50 to 60 to $70,000, I believe. But again, I think long term, we all know where this thing's going. It's
Absolutely.
going up and to the
Long
right.
term, like we know that for sure. I just think that because we've talked about the cycles for such a long time and we've had this expectation built up in our minds, it's painful. It's just feelings, right?
Let's leave today's show on pain, fear.
I don't think it's necessary because there's so many other listen, once I saw that China was in the mix and that they were going to start to, I mean, in my opinion, compete with the United States on holding Bitcoin, not just in China, but through their other, as I like to call it, satellite countries, Taiwan and Hong Kong, I think, and Bhutan, you had mentioned earlier as well, right? I think that the way that they're doing it all sneaky is the signal that we are going to start competing with them on that front as well. We just won't have a choice. It'll be whether we like to do it or not, we're just going to have to because China's doing it.
It's hard not to be bullish, and I think that's the signal. I think it's impossible to be pessimistic on Bitcoin right now when you've got America and China, two largest nation states in the world, literally fighting over 127,000 Bitcoin. I think that is all the signal.
And let's take it the other way around too, right? The UK, which is, you know, they're not part of the EU, but the UK, which is like having their own troubles and they're not even like really competing that much. They have the third biggest Bitcoin reserve in the world. You know, Europe is just like completely not even in the competition at this point. And I think that that's why they're trying to launch a central bank digital currency. They're trying to see how they can keep control without having to necessarily adopt Bitcoin, because they know that, you know, once they do that, the EU is totally over and these countries will go back to having their own currency and their own monetary policies. But you're going to see more and more serious countries come up and say, hey, I want in. And they're going to figure out a way to get it. And right now, it might be through seizure. It might be through this petty fighting. It might be through X, Y, and Z. But eventually, something's going to have to give because Bitcoin is absolutely scarce. They're going to have to capitulate and buy Bitcoin and put energy behind it and infrastructure and start mining on a national level. And I think that's what Trump supposedly promised. Let's see if he comes through on that promise. But that is what China is already doing. And they have the land, they have the power, they have the infrastructure to do this sort of thing. So we, as a country here in the US, have to get it together and start accelerating, because once China starts to do it, we might actually fall behind.
I'm team acceleration.
Put gasoline on that bitch.
Let's light it up. I don't think I can add anything to that, Sophie. I think that's a beautiful note to end today's show on. If you don't have anything else to leave the incredible listeners and viewers with today.
I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for giving Luke and I a chance to be your hosts today. Nico and I will be back in the driver's seat tomorrow and Friday, and then all will be normal. You will have Nico and Opti back on Monday. Right now, they are at Mining Disrupt. If you want, you can check out that live stream. I am also coming out with a new episode of Satoshi tomorrow and Friday, and potentially Monday, because I'm covering for Dante and Rustin. So if you guys love the show, smash the like button, hit the subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you can get the most bullish signal in Bitcoin only news. And until tomorrow, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.